Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Primary Chamber of Commerce podcast. I'm Chris Inman with Idea Cleveland, and today we have a special guest.
I am Reanna Karousis. I'm the Director of Communications and Engagement at the Fund for Our Economic Future.
That's awesome. So she is our guest speaker for our first luncheon this year, coming up on October 19th. So, what is your organization? What is Fund for Economic Future?
The Fund for Our Economic Future is a nonprofit based in Cleveland that works with organizations across Northeast Ohio to pool funding and invest in research, initiatives, and other resources to drive equitable economic growth in Northeast Ohio.
What do you think is the problem? Where are the workers?
That is the question, isn't it?
It is the question we want to answer.
Yeah, and it has been a question on people's minds for a long time. So at the end of 2021, the Fund for Our Economic Future, along with several other partners in the community, came together to kick off a research project to understand just that. And in doing so, we talked to over 600 employers and 5,000 adults across Northeast Ohio to understand how people were experiencing the talent shortages in Northeast Ohio specifically, and how workers feel about work, experience work, and what their plans are for work in the wake of the pandemic.
Okay, so it's more complicated than the talking heads on news shows want to make it be.
Yes, as everything always is. Unfortunately, there is not a short, simple answer to where the worker is, but we do have unprecedented insights into that answer because of this work, and I'm really excited to share it with the chamber members coming up here.
All right, so give us a tidbit. What's some of the information?
Sure. So one of the reasons we're having a talent shortage is simply because there are fewer people working in Northeast Ohio than there were before the pandemic, about 5% fewer. So
5%. So did they retire? Did they decide to stay home? What was the most popular reason?
About, I want to say 175,000 people in our survey footprint retired. That wasn't a whole lot. So about 2/3 of those people retired earlier than expected, but that tracks with before the pandemic as well. But really part of that is the silver tsunami. There's a lot of baby boomers retiring, and that's just the nature of our workforce.
That could have happened regardless.
Exactly. A lot of other people have left the workforce for other reasons, like health issues, disabilities, staying home to take care of kids, things like that.
Is the gig economy a part of that?
It is. So the workforce that remains is different than before the pandemic. I think everyone can say themselves that we are all different people than we were in January 2020, and we look at work differently. A lot of people got laid off or lost work during the pandemic, and a lot of those people started doing things like DoorDash or Shipt or babysitting for neighbors or just finding ways to make do. And a lot of those people decided that they liked working like that. So people have, in many ways, left traditional work, and employers are not just competing with other employers, they're competing with a much broader set of opportunities in gig work.
It is an interesting area now because you can make $20, $30 here and there driving your car a couple hours.
Yeah.
Or you can work at Target for 2 hours and make the same amount of money.
Yeah.
But it's more flexibility.
Yeah.
So I totally understand where some people maybe don't want that traditional job at those.
Yeah, or maybe they would like it. We had one participant in one of our focus groups who works for, I think it was DoorDash, but she and several other women in her community don't have access to childcare anymore because a lot of childcare centers closed, and you can't work at Target for 2 hours and make the same amount that you do at DoorDash when your kids don't have anywhere to go, but they can sit in the back seat while you work for DoorDash. So it is in some ways choice, and it is sometimes not so much choice, but people are forced to make decisions based on barriers to employment.
Yeah. But there are people that want a traditional job.
Yep.
And there's so many of our members are running businesses that need those employees. So what do you think those people want? Now, what changed in their mindset when it comes to getting a job?
Yeah. One of the key drivers of people leaving work at some point in the pandemic, and in the instance of a pizza shop, for example, in the hospitality industry, something having to do with a negative work environment was one of the key drivers of people leaving. And one of the things that we found is that while a high number of employees are at risk of quitting their jobs still going into this next year, employers aren't doing the simple step of asking their employees what they want and need. We have lots of tips and implications from our research about the flexible work schedules and the preferences around remote or in-person work, compensation, benefits, things like that. But no one's going to know your workforce better than you if you can build a culture that desires and invites worker voice and is prepared to act on it.
That makes sense. But there's a lot of, let's go back to the pizza shop.
Sure.
You ain't working remotely
No.
at a pizza shop.
No.
And you're going to have to work evenings working in a pizza shop. Do you think that somewhere there's some unrealistic goals of people want to get a job, but they're putting this pressure on their employer like, hey, I want this, I need this. But that's not really realistic in some business situations.
That's definitely true. There are places where people cannot work remotely, manufacturing, healthcare, hospitality, plenty of places like that. And there are plenty of people who don't want to work remotely, but they do want to be treated like people who have lives outside of work. And employers should be working to accommodate that as much as they can within their business model. One example I can give you is one of the employees who worked at a manufacturing company who we talked to relied on public transit to get to work, and he had to take two or three connecting buses to get to work, which is the case for many workers. And the bus route changed, and he would either have to leave like 2 hours earlier every morning to get to work, or he was going to be perpetually 10 minutes late for his shift. In an environment where companies are bleeding workers, it is much easier to understand the situation and adjust a shift schedule so he can clock in 10 minutes later without getting fired for constantly being late, rather than having him leave to find something else that suits his
Because you think about it, like now
needs.
his job is now taking up 2 more hours of his day.
Exactly.
Those are 2 unpaid hours
Exactly.
for hourly employees. They think like if you're a salary, okay, it's a little bit different in your world, but that's 2 unpaid hours to maintain that 8-hour job.
Exactly.
All over a 10-minute lateness. So, in that situation, you would hope their employer understands.
And they did. They talked about it, and they changed the shift, and they were able to retain him for much longer than they would have otherwise, just because they had the curiosity and desire to know what was behind the issue.
They asked the questions.
Exactly.
So sometimes it's as simple as just asking.
Yep.
Just ask your employees, hey.
Yeah, that's what I would say above everything is figure out how to find out what your employees want and what they need, because it's always cheaper to keep a good employee than to try to find a new one.
Excellent. So, all right, so you have this giant report.
Yeah.
We all hated reports when we were in college and high school. What will we as business owners get out of digging into this report?
Yeah, so you don't have to dig too deep. I will bring the high points to our discussion. But in the meantime and afterwards, anyone can go to wherearetheworkers.com, and there is just you can dig in and read to your heart's desire. You can also click on Become an Employer of Choice and get those key takeaways for some of the strategies that can apply to your work. And you can also filter them by a couple of different fields, like whether you're focusing on retention or attraction, whether you have hourly workers, salary workers, things like that. And we're going to continue to build out those tools to give employers like the quick touch, what do I need to know to improve and strengthen my workplace to be more competitive.
That's awesome. Oh, I know I'm looking forward to the presentation. I'm sure you're looking forward to giving it.
Absolutely.
And we're going to be at Stancato's October 19th. Thanks to the kind people at Paychecks for helping sponsor this event as well. Make sure we do a shout out. If you see Sandy, make sure you thank her. She's awesome. And thank you so much for joining me and taking some time out of your day so we can help our members understand what they're going to learn when they show up at our luncheon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to meeting everyone.
All right. Thank you for joining us, and you guys have a great day.